Hatsune Miku is a 16-year-old Japanese female singer with long turquoise ponytails, dressed in a school uniform. She possesses the largest song catalog in the history of the world, with over 100,000 songs and 170,000 YouTube videos to date. She also attracts over 100 million YouTube views and 2.3 million followers on Facebook. One of her most striking features, however, is that she is a virtual character who performs concerts as a hologram. Thousands of fans flock to concert halls to get a glimpse of this futuristic concert. The aim of this paper is twofold. First, I conduct a cultural exegesis of the Japanese Vocaloid, that is, vocal android phenomenon, represented by Hatsune Miku in order to locate the social and cultural realities Hatsune embodies and reflects. Second, I offer a biblical and theological response to the rise of digital hologram culture exemplified by Hatsune Miku and her followers. I contend that the widespread popularity of Hatsune Miku reflects the relational aspect of the humanity's image of God, which includes people's desire for community with others and with God, which can at times lead to idolatry. The Japanese music technology company Krypton Future Media created Hatsune Miku in 2007 using a vocal synthesizer program developed by Yamaha. Hatsune performs live concerts as a 3D hologram projected on a curved glass screen, along with a live band. Hatsune soon gained great popularity with videos proliferating on websites like YouTube and the Japanese website Nico Nico. The popularity of Hatsune reaches beyond Japan, and the growing demand for international concerts led to the formation of Miku Expo. The Miku Expo organizes her worldwide tours. For the year 2020, the Miku Expo planned the most extensive tour yet. It began with a European tour traveling London, Paris, Berlin, Amsterdam, and Barcelona. She was supposed to finish the year with a USA and Canada tour, visiting 15 different concert halls located in Vancouver, Los Angeles, Coachella, San Jose, Dallas, Atlanta, Orlando, Washington, D.C., New Jersey, Boston, Chicago, Toronto, and Montreal. However, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, the USA and Canada tour was unfortunately postponed. Her tickets usually cost between $40 to $150, and Hatsune would often sell out venues which held 2,000 to 3,000 people. While the concept of a virtual idol may seem strange for many, Hatsune stands as a harbinger of an international phenomenon. Signs of the international spread of hologram culture include musical performances by deceased stars. Examples are Tupac performing along Dr. Dre and Snoop Dogg at the Coachella Music Festival in 2012, Roy Orbison at the Motorpoint area in Wales in 2018, Frank Zappa in 2019, and Whitney Houston's tour in 2020. The growing public acceptance of virtual idols is further evident through digital avatars such as Lil Miquela, who has amassed 2 million followers on Instagram, and corporations such as Prada, Calvin Klein, and Samsung featuring her in their projects. The notable UK virtual band Gorillaz even won a Grammy among many other music awards. The popularity of Hatsune Miku and the growing international acceptance of hologram and digital celebrities raise two questions. First, why is Hatsune so popular, and what values does this cultural trend reflect? Second, how should Christians respond to recent developments of Vocaloid phenomenon? Here I offer a theological reflection in response to the Vocaloid phenomenon by understanding it in light of the theological idea of the Imago Dei, that is, the image of God. I argue that the fan's relationship with Hatsune Miku reflects the human need for relationship with others, partnership with the opposite sex, and communion with God. The Christian doctrine of the Imago Dei fundamentally communicates that human beings, both male and female, uniquely bear the image of God. Although a majority of theologians understand this doctrine as playing a fundamental role in defining theological anthropology, the specific reference of this image remains highly contested. Scholars primarily identify the image as referring to one of four categories. The four categories include 1. Corporality, that is, a physical or spiritual dimension of a person. Second is noetic, that is cognitive quality of a human being. Third is functionality. And fourth, relationality. Edward Curtis rightfully acknowledges that certain level of ambiguity is associated with the concept of image of God, and the diversity of opinion points to the multifaceted nature of humanity who bear the image of God. In the next section, however, I will primarily focus on the relational aspect of the image of God. I begin with an exegetical and theological analysis of the key passage, Genesis 1:26-28. Once I've established the working ideas from the image of God, I will apply them to the cultural phenomena of Hatsune Miku. The biblical foundation for the doctrine of the image of God appear both in the Old and New Testaments, that is, in Genesis 1:26, 1:27, chapter 5, verse 1 and 3, chapter 9, verse 6, 1 Corinthians 11:7, Colossians 3:10, and James 3:9. Theologians and biblical scholars alike identify Genesis 1:26-28 as the central text for this doctrine. The text reads as follows. Then God said, "Let us create humanity in our image, according to our likeness, and they will rule over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the sky, and over the beasts, and over all the earth, and over all the moving creatures that moves about upon the earth." Then God created humanity in his image. In the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created them. Then God blessed them, and God said to them, "Be fruitful and multiply, and fill the earth and subdue it, and exercise dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the bird of the heavens, and over all the creatures moving about upon the earth." Two details here highlight the relational quality of the image of God. First, both God and humanity possess singular and plural nature. Second, the author uniquely attributes gender distinctions, that is, maleness and femaleness, to humanity. A close attention to the passage reveals that the text uses both singular and plural verbs and pronouns in referring to the same antecedent. Verse 26 begins with a divine statement written in the singular voice, God, that is, he said. The following direct speech, however, God speaks in the plural, "Let us create humanity in our image, according to our likeness." Verse 27 then returns to referring to God's action in the singular, that is, he created, in his image, he blessed, he said. The same switch between singular and plural references applies to the term Adam, that is, humanity. Both verses 26 and 28 refer to Adam in the plural, that is, they will rule. God blessed them, and God said to them. Verse 27, however, refers to Adam as a singular entity. He created him. The deliberate alternation of singular and plural for both God and humanity point to the similarity human beings and God share as singular and communal, that is, relational beings. The distinction that God created humanity as both male, zakar, and female, necheva, further corroborates that the image of God refers to the relational community of human beings. Phyllis Tribble contends that being created in male and female reflects the image of God. The terms male, that is zakar, and female, necheva, are used to denote the male gender and female gender of a species. One should note carefully, however, that while the author describes the creation of animals, and it is obvious that all living creatures require two genders, the text only conveys gender distinction to humanity. This exclusive reference to the gender distinction of male and female with humans further emphasizes the relational aspect of humanity. Karl Barth most famously argues for this relational model for the image of God. Barth states that he wills and creates man as a partner who is capable of entering into covenant relationship with himself. Similarly, Klaus Westermann's form critical analysis that compares Genesis 1:26-30 with Sumerian Babylonian literature in Genesis 2 leads him to conclude that the uniqueness of human beings consists in their being God's counterparts, humans are created in such a way that their very existence is intended to be their relationship to God. The textual analysis of this section thus articulates that relationality is an integral aspect of the image of God for human beings. Namely, human beings express the image of God through their ability to have relationship with God as well as other human beings. The latter especially includes the relationship formed between male and females. A careful evaluation of the inception of Hatsune Miku, the process of her music production, and fan interaction reveals 3 features that contribute to her popularity. First, the new process of music production which allows fan participation and collaboration. Second, the fans' desire for a relationship with Hatsune. And 3, the fascination fan feels with Hatsune's non-material existence, which symbolizes a transcendent ideal. The following section analyzes each of these features in light of the doctrine of the image of God. A key factor that contributes to Hatsune's popularity is the fans' participation in the creative process. Krypton identifies the purpose of Hatsune as encouraging a worldwide creative community to produce and share Miku-related content. Anyone who owns the Hatsune Miku Vocaloid program can create songs for her and retain the copyright for their original songs. The company also placed Hatsune under the Creative Commons license and provided open-source 3D models of Hatsune, which users can choreograph through the program Miku Miku Dance. Krypton also created a free social media platform, Piaporo, where fans can upload and share their creations, as well as meet with other fans who desire to collaboratively produce songs. Thus, Hatsune presents a new model of stardom marked by fan participation and community, where fans bring their own talents and skills to create content and an experience. When fans attend Hatsune's concert, they celebrate their own creation, success, and beliefs. This participatory model powerfully reflects what people can accomplish when they express the image of God through collaboration. The Bible communicates this need for community and collaboration by noting how God endows individuals with different gifts. That is in Romans 12:6-8 and 1 Corinthians 12:8-10. He also assigns varying parts in 1 Corinthians chapter 12 and gives diverse roles in Ephesians chapter 4. Ecclesiastes 4:9-10 also reads, 2 are better than 1 because they have a good return for their labor. For if either of them falls, the one will lift up his companion. But woe to the one who falls when there is not another to lift him up. This passage communicates both the strengths and benefits of companionship and warns of the risks and challenges of solidarity. The Old Testament commemorates numerous monumental tasks achieved through human collaboration. The construction of the tabernacle involved all who were willing, men and women alike, who brought forth various precious objects and people who offered their skills in Exodus in chapter 35. Similarly, the book of Nehemiah painstakingly lists the men and women who participated in reconstructing the wall and gates of Jerusalem in Nehemiah chapter 4. The collective participation of the people plays an especially prominent role in the book of Chronicles. Sarah Yafet observes that the chronicler is largely a retell from the stories of books of Samuel and Kings. Yet, one key difference includes the author's democratizing trend, which considers the people as an active force in history. The narrative of David bringing up the ark to Jerusalem especially illustrates this emphasis, where officers, crowd, Levites, and priests play an integral role in the decision and act of transporting the ark to Jerusalem. While these biblical stories do not make explicit connections with the doctrine of the image of God, the Bible nevertheless values and celebrates the act of human collaboration. In light of these biblical passages, the collaborative fan participation in creating Hatsune-related content, that is art, music, videos, can be understood as a new expression of the relational aspect of the image of God in a digital culture. The Hatsune Miku phenomenon, however, may also point to the disruption of the human interpersonal relationships based in the fallen image of God. Expressions of the disruption of the image of God includes fans' extreme sexual attraction towards an underage teenage girl, Hatsune, that is, ephebophilia, as well as the relational preference for Hatsune over real people, known as digisexuality. The most extreme expression of this sexual and emotive attachment to Hatsune is a man's decision to marry Hatsune in real life. Akihiko Kondo is a 35-year-old middle school office employee who married Hatsune Miku in November 2018. While the government does not legally recognize this union, a tech company, Gatebox, provided a marriage registration for the couple. Hatsune participated in the wedding as a doll, and Kondo placed a wedding ring on the arm of the stuffed figure. Kondo states that the shape of happiness and love is different for each person. Thus, the traditional model of a marriage between a real man and woman does not apply to everyone's happiness. The fans' attraction to Hatsune is unsurprising because the creators of Hatsune carefully chose her every detail to attract people and gain popularity. Sabo notes that Hatsune Miku can be understood as a very good example of a way a body and its materiality are artificially constructed in the context of a capitalist, consumerist, technologically advanced society. Yuji Sone further identifies Hatsune Miku as a paradigm of an idealized teenage girl. Hatsune's gender, age, physiognomy, body frame, and clothing therefore reflect corporate choices to trigger popularity and consumer consumption, and perhaps sexual attraction. The extreme attraction to Hatsune by her admirers, however, results in a subgenre of fan-produced sexualized Hatsune and pornographic content. The producer, Deadbolt P, wrote a song which sings about Hatsune engaging in safe sex with the listener because of her inability to conceive or transmit infections as a non-human entity. Kayan Lam further states that in another sense, the bodies are consumed as commodities, and the users are manipulating the virtual constructions in the formulation of their imagery, Miku consciousness. Some people even desire a relationship, whether platonic or sexual, with fictional virtual characters over real women. Thus, Hatsune expresses the commercialization and objectification of female sexuality. The relational model of the image of God indicates that the desire for sexual companionship is a natural expression of being created in the image of God. Already in the first reference to the image of God in Genesis 1:27, the text associates the image of God in humanity with the possession of zakar, that is maleness, and nekeva, femaleness. These genders, which connote the ability for procreation, in contrast to the more common terms ish, man, and isha, woman. Additionally, all three references to the notion of the image of God in the Old Testament, that is in Genesis 1:26 to 28, chapter 5 verse 3, and chapter 9 verses 6 to 7, carry the connotation of sexual unity and procreation. In two of these instances, following the reference that God created humanity in the image of God, God commands, "Be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth." That is in Genesis 1:27 and chapter 9 verses 6 to 7. A person's relationship with the opposite gender thus provides a sexual expression of the image of God. The fervent sexual attraction fans feel towards Hatsune and their substitution of Hatsune with real human companionship presents an aberrant expression of the image of God according to Christian theology. Unfortunately, no passage in the Bible directly handles the issue of human relationship with Vocaloids or engagement in sexual acts with a virtual character. The closest biblical analog to our situation comes from one of the least read or preached passages in the whole Bible, that is Ezekiel chapter 16. In this chapter, the prophet Ezekiel tells an allegory which personifies Jerusalem as Yahweh's beautiful wife who engages in whoring with a man who represents Assyrian Empire. Ezekiel 16, verse 17 reads, "You took your fine jewels from my gold and from my silver which I gave to you, and you made for yourself male images, Talmezakar, and you committed harlotry with them." In the Old Testament, sexual infidelity frequently symbolizes Israel's spiritual unfaithfulness to Yahweh or spiritual adultery. Examples include Hosea 2 and Jeremiah 3. While Ezekiel 16 primarily concerns the issue of Jerusalem's idolatry, the fact that the author includes the woman's act of engaging in sexual acts with a male image within a sequence of abominable acts, that is, creation of high places, presenting offerings to the idol, and child sacrifice, suggests the negative connotation implied in this act. The biblical model of the image of God communicates that human beings are created to live in a relationship with other people. This includes sexual companionship with the person of the opposite gender. Moreover, the male and female union naturally leads to the birth of a progeny, which allows further expressions of the image of God through the relationship between a parent and a child. Although Hatsune takes on an appearance of a human female, she is nevertheless a human creation, and her digital form fundamentally lacks the ability for sexual partnership and gestation. The passage in Ezekiel 16 provides one biblical example where engagement of sexual acts with human-like objects is portrayed in a negative light. Moreover, the passage, "He will cling to his wife, and they will be as one flesh," indicates that the Bible describes human marriage and sexual bond as a union between two physical persons. Ken MacLeod contends that the proclivity for holographic performances evoke a form of technological spirituality, and that holograms blur various boundaries, that is, material and virtual, living and the dead, temporal and eternal, as well as transform both the performer and the audience with a sense of presence with the transcendent. Hatsune, on the one hand, exhibits a transcendent nature that defies time and space. On the other hand, she is accessible to her fans. In this respect, Hatsune provides an interesting parallel to Jesus, who also overcomes boundaries as one who is fully divine and human, eternal but also temporal, and spatially distant yet spiritually immanent. Hence, I speculate that the wide popularity and fan attraction to Hatsune could reflect the human nature in the image of God that seeks relationship with the divine. The creation of humanity in the image of God should result in the desire and search for God. The psalmist, time and time again, describes the heart's desire for the Lord, at times directly stating that my soul yearns, even faints, for the courts of Yahweh. My heart and my flesh cry out for the living God, in Psalm 84. The psalmist likens his desire for God with thirst as a parched land, in Psalm 143, and states that my soul thirsts for you, my flesh yearns for you, in a dry and weary land where there is no water, in Psalm 63. This spiritual thirst for God is also likened to how a deer pants for streams of water, in Psalm 42. Another metaphor to communicate the search for God includes how a watchman waits for the morning, in Psalm 130. The obsessive sexual attraction with Hatsune may represent an expression of sin's perversion of substituting the desire for a relationship with God with the mundane. Paul's first chapter of the letter to the Romans describes that even though God makes known his divine qualities to human, they exchange the glory of the immortal God for images made to look like a mortal human being and birds and animals and reptiles. Romans chapter 1, verse 23. Paul continues to write that God therefore allowed humans to pursue their sinful desires and sexual impurity and to worship created things rather than God. Douglas Moo notes that these words were addressed to the people, and the chapter's similarity with the turn to idolatry with the fall suggests that Paul is addressing all humanity. In these verses, Paul accuses the people for suppressing the truth because God has given people knowledge of himself through nature, in verse 20. A particular way people suppress the truth includes creating images made to look like a mortal human being and birds and animals and reptiles, in verse 23. Robert Jewett notes this passage's fourfold designation of human beings, birds, animals, and reptiles alludes to the creation and the fall. The passage therefore contributes to the theology of creation and the notion of the image of God from a New Testament perspective. This passage points out that in contrast to God creating humanity in the image of God, people's act of making images of human beings reflects the consequence of sin. Moreover, the text further identifies that the suppression of God's revelation manifests itself through wanton human sexual relationship and the disruption of the fellowship with God. The theology reflected in Romans 1 parallels Hatsune Miku phenomenon in significant ways, namely, the people's creation of Hatsune and desire for relations with her may reflect the principles in Romans 1, which identifies the intrinsic human knowledge and desire for the Creator being expressed through the creation of human-like images and sexual impurity. Thus, the obsessive desire for relational and sexual intimacy with Hatsune may reflect the symptom of sin in desiring relationship with images made to look like a mortal human being rather than their creator. To conclude, this study offers a cultural and theological assessment of Japanese Vocaloid culture exemplified by Hatsune Miku. The study of her development, music production, and fan reception point to three factors which contribute to the wide reception and popularity of Hatsune. These include 1. Collaboration of fans in the creative process, 2. Fans' desire for interpersonal relationships, especially romantic relationships, and 3. Hatsune's transcendent quality. I then analyzed these three features of the Hatsune Miku phenomenon in light of the biblical doctrine image of God. After I identified that the image of God primarily lies in humanity's relational nature, I contend that Hatsune's popularity reflects three aspects of the image of God. That is, number 1, human design for relationship and collaboration with others. Second, expression of the image of God through relationship with the opposite sex. And third, human desire for fellowship with God. The popularity of Hatsune positively exemplifies the image of God when they collaboratively work with one another. However, the fans' extreme desire for relationship with Hatsune, whether platonic or sexual, reflects an aberrant expression of the image of God, when the relational desire with a person of the opposite sex and or with God is filled by a virtual character. Jesus' summary of the Old Testament's greatest commands as love the Lord your God and love your neighbor as yourself in Matthew 22 still reminds Christians to pursue relationships with God and fellow people rather than replacing this relational need with Hatsune Miku or any other Vocaloid idols. Finally, for those who are interested in the fuller, longer published version of the paper, it is available in the book Technology and Theology. I also have author's proofs, which is slightly different than the published version, uploaded on my personal website. Thank you for listening, and I welcome your comments and questions.